Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, August 19th, 2015, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Kaahumanu Friday. We have lots of stuff to talk about today. It's been a very, very busy news day so far. And the phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. Tom is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Quick program note. Activist Marian Azizi is going to be our third-hour guest tomorrow, talking about some of the stuff that's going on inside Israel related to the people of Israel, their infrastructure, their liberal agenda or whatever. Things are not going very good for the people of Israel underneath their government, and she's going to be telling us some new developments along there. All right, I'm going to start again by looking at Kiev because it is very obvious that the American corporate media, the Western corporate media, are trying very hard to keep everybody distracted away from what's going on over there in Ukraine. Kiev forces again continue to violate the ceasefire, according to the Donetsk People's Republic Defense Ministry, at least 22 times over the last 24 hours. There was a video that was up on YouTube, basically just showing the skyline of Donetsk with all the bombardment going on, and yeah, it sure looks like a war to me. YouTube took their video down. Thankfully, of course, it is in other locations around the net that we link to. They don't want you paying attention to what's going on there. Until something happens, they can say, oh, gee, it's a war, and Russia's to blame. Now, the Donetsk Prime Minister, Zakharchenko, is saying the Minsk agreements are torn up, they're shredded. He's not saying he did it, he's saying Poroshenko did it. Says Kiev is going to attack full on. And even Paul Craig Roberts is out there saying the Minsk agreement has failed. And he's chastising Vladimir Putin for a little too much wishful thinking, because Putin was trying to find a diplomatic solution and really failed to comprehend that Kiev never had any intention of keeping the Minsk agreement. And Washington, D.C. never had any intention of allowing the Minsk agreement to be kept. And Putin's now in a very, very difficult place. His own Russian people are saying, look, these are our fellow Russians, our brothers and sisters, being killed by Poroshenko in eastern Ukraine. But Poroshenko also realizes when he goes over that border, he opens the door to the war between the U.S. and Russia that the U.S. clearly wants, and Europe does not. Now, 18 nations are taking part in NATO military drills inside Ukraine. 18, that's a lot. Seems like a lot of nations taking a drill in an already ongoing conflict zone, right? Well, they're not really fooling anybody. Because over in Russia, they're basically saying these exercises are just a cover for Kiev's military actions. They're going to escalate the war against the eastern Ukraine, and they're going to tell everybody, oh, all those explosions and everything, that's just the war games going on. Really, you know, and look at all the fake blood we brought along to make it look real. Isn't that really cool? You know, and body parts and everything that we bought from Planned Parenthood, just to heighten that sense of reality for the TV cameras. Now, here's a very bizarre story. We know that Ukraine is hovering at the edge of economic default. But Ukraine managed to secure $732 million from the World Bank for what are being called investment projects. Really, it's just for infrastructure development, you know, like fortifications, bunkers, ammo dumps, military graveyards, got to build a lot of those, that kind of infrastructure development. And it is rather amazing to look at the way Greece is being treated by these money junkies versus Ukraine, where they're just giving Poroshenko whatever money he needs to get this war going. Because without it, and the economy implodes, the people of the world are going to point the finger of blame where it rightly deserves to go. Private central banks issuing all of the public currency as a loan at interest. The corruption over there is so great, apparently one of the Ukrainian oligarchs has managed to pilfer $1.8 billion from the United States. And the U.S. is ignoring it because they don't want to disturb their special relationship with Ukraine and Poroshenko and Kiev, because that's their prime tool to get this war going that they want so badly. Ukraine is currently taking electricity that they're buying from Russia, and they're turning around and reselling it to Poland at double the price for the use of their wires. I'm sure the Poles are not going to be very happy at that here. Very interesting situation. Kolomoysk-owned TV channel 1+1 showed a government meeting in Kiev where one of the ministers talking about the deterioration, saying, we have to live in this country. Let's do this right. And apparently Yatsenyuk stood up and said, I don't have to live here. It's not my historic homeland. I'm going to, if things get bad, I'm just going to leave. Boy, there's a real confidence builder for you. Interestingly enough, there's an article that came out in irrationality.wordpress.com, straight shooting from the UK, and they're talking about this British conservative think tank. In fact, it's the oldest one there. It's called the Bow Group, basically saying that the theory of neoliberal interventionism is bankrupt because it has not been working in all of these countries that the U.S. has carried this out with. It used to work back in the 1950s and 1960s when nobody knew what was going on behind the scenes. But the Bow Group is now saying that all of this sanctioning and stuff, this isn't working. It's causing more harm than good. And maybe it's time for a rethink from top to bottom, which would be the wise and prudent thing to do. Unfortunately, we're all living under governments which institutionally are incapable of admitting error or mistake or changing course. I'm going to prove my skull is tougher than that brick wall. Actually, I'm going to use your kids' skulls. Now, down in Australia, there is a new documentary film about what's been going on in Ukraine in terms of attacks on the civilians. Apparently, it's a very well-received film, and it's already being called a public relations disaster for the United States and the European Union, because this Australian film is showing the world what's really been going on in Ukraine. They don't want you to know about. All they want you to think is hate Russia, Putin's to blame, hate Russia. Don't look at these documentaries and all this other stuff. You will hate the people we tell you to hate. You will make war on the people we tell you to war. Another article over here, this is in Four Winds 10. You might be a stupid American sheeple, sort of channeling Jeff Foxworthy here, talking about how even though President Poroshenko has acknowledged publicly that, yeah, maybe Kiev shot down Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, the corporate media is still pushing this idea that this was Putin, this was Russia, this was the Eastern Ukrainian republics. They just wanted to kill a passenger jet full of innocent, poor civilians. Really? Why? Give me a reason. Give me a reason for Putin or the Eastern Ukrainian republics to shoot down a civilian passenger liner. I can give you one for Kiev, too, to shoot it down and blame it on Putin and the Eastern Ukrainian republics. Or maybe they were up there trying to shoot down Putin's presidential jet, which looks a lot alike a Malaysian Airlines passenger jet, and they got the wrong one. Maybe. Meanwhile, Putin is looking at the track record of above-board behavior of the U.S. government, realizing that there is none, and as a result, the air defense and missile defense systems around the city of Moscow are now on their highest level of alert. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go ahead and take a phone call real quick here. Steve in Massachusetts, aloha. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Mike. I just want to talk to you about an interview I heard the other day with Alex Jones. And he was talking about with David Duke. They were debating about... did you happen to see that?
No, I didn't. I wish I had. Apparently, it's already been deleted from Alex Jones' website and YouTube channel.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, too, is, David Duke, say what you say about him. He is pretty knowledgeable, and he said a lot of things that somehow is the certain type of Jewish people. They always seem to pop up throughout history, and they always seem to get control of the bank.
He's a very articulate man. We've had him on the show here, and I've reached out to him to come back on. After this apparent showdown with Alex Jones here, and so yeah, we're going to get him back on.
Well, one thing I did notice is even though David Duke was he put the blame on the Jewish people, Alex Jones never really skirted around the whole thing. He never wanted to mention it. So Alex is in an awkward position because if you've seen other videos of Alex Jones on YouTube, he's out there always declaring that he is a supporter of Israel. He stands by them, will defend them. There's no question Israel is great in Alex Jones' mind. And that puts him in a bit of a bind because when Duke was on my show and he starts talking about the Jewish people, I will correct him when he's talking about the actions of the government of Israel and say, let's talk about, because we're not talking the entire global Jewish people. We're talking about Netanyahu and, Tzipi Livni and all these other people, and I'll correct him. Alex can't do that because he is constrained from ever saying anything critical about the government of Israel. And that must have felt very awkward to Alex Jones, and I can see why maybe, he just decided he was going to Orwellize that whole incident. Yeah, if you ever have a chance, if you could, it was really interesting.
Well, somebody did excerpt the interview and put it up on its own YouTube, and we've got that link to the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com right now if you want to go take a look at it, and I'm certainly going to look at it a little later in the day.
Okay, yeah, I just want to touch base on it. I just can't understand how a certain group throughout history just manages to stay in power and create havoc around the world, and how decade upon decade people just follow what they say.
Just look at them as a much more successful variant on the Gypsies, where they're raised with this ethos of entitlement and exceptionalism, and we're real people and everybody else is just there to be preyed on. And when you grow up an entire culture and civilization around that kind of a belief structure, they're going to tend to be very successful at the expense of everybody else around them, and there's going to always be backlashes, and that basically is the history, of what's been going on, and they're still doing it, unfortunately, and frankly, I think until that we can get a more widespread acceptance of this idea of live and let live, and, everybody is entitled to the fruits of their own labors, and we're not here to be harvested by somebody else. There's always going to be this constant conflict between those who feel they have a right to take and those who feel that they do not want to be taken from anymore.
The one scary thing is we got a system where you take away a president and that's not going to do anything. You take away members of the Congress, that's not going to do it. You have to completely erase the whole system.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about that, and there's this sheriff that's out there saying constitutionalists are the equivalent of ISIS, and, how dare they talk about, shutting down the entire U.S. government. And my response to that is, you show me any part of the U.S. government that's working, and I will protect it from the coming crisis. But so far, nobody's taken me up on that offer yet.
It seems like people are waking up, starting with 9/11, and
yep.
Then you got the other incidences with the internet, and I think slowly people they know something's not right,
yes.
And slowly they're starting to understand. Maybe not enough, but we'll see.
Well, they're out there asking the questions, and that's an important victory. They're not just sitting there and accepting blindly what the corporate media or the government tells them. If there's one thing we can point to as a victory from here in the independent media, it is that over the last 2 decades, we have transformed the American people into highly critical, skeptical consumers of government propaganda and media. And by consumers, I mean look at it and then reject it if it doesn't pass muster. And it's a very different world. And anybody in government and corporate media who thinks that the methods and tactics from the 1950s are going to go on working, they're delusional. Those days are gone forever. We worked very hard to end that kind of gullible, naive American population?
Yeah, I think they're definitely scared. I think
yes.
They're so scared that they might try something really soon because people are really waking up.
Yeah, I think this whole Black Lives Matter thing and Oath Keepers giving guns and then daring the Ferguson police to shoot. Yeah, they're trying to get a race riot going here. And so far, again, cooler heads are prevailing. In all the populations, we're all beginning to realize we're all Americans and our common enemy is that private central bank and a government that sold us into their slavery 100 years ago. Okay?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, I got to switch over here to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I just want to disagree with your last caller. I mean, I've listened to Dr. David Duke for at least a couple of years now, and he definitely segregates. And he, you know, if you say that he came out against the Jewish people, that would be wrong to say so. I mean, I think the Jewish people are very powerless, just like we are in our government. There are a lot of good people there, but I think what he said, there's definitely a separation there. There's Jewish people, and then there's Zionists.
Yes.
And I think that's what Dr. David Duke says quite often when he talks about it. He says, I'm not talking about the Jewish people. They're very powerless, like many of us are.
Well, let me just insert a comment because we're almost out of time before the commercial break here. I haven't looked at the interview yet. I'm going to make a point of looking at it. It may be that Duke was trying to put Alex Jones on the spot by saying Jewish people, Jewish people, Jewish people, daring Alex Jones to say, no, don't you mean it's the Israeli government that's doing these bad things, which Alex Jones is constrained from saying. And, you know, and that may be why Alex Jones was looking so unhappy. So I got to watch this interview. You know,
I agree with you. That's probably what was going on.
Duke is sharp. David Duke is very sharp. Yes, he's very clever. Yes. Okay? All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're coming up in a commercial break. Latest word out from Moscow is Vladimir Putin is planning on coming to the United Nations General Assembly to address them all directly. No ideas about what he's going to say, but I'll bet it's not going to be love and kisses for the United States of America. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. A rather interesting little story over in Russia today, where the coalition ISIS successes show no signs of halting terrorist group. We know why. They're not intended to. The U.S. created ISIS to plop into a targeted country to justify invasion and attack against a nation that has done nothing wrong. Nobody's going to believe Yemen has nuclear weapons of mass destruction. Oh, ISIS is there. We have to go in and bomb people. We have to bomb Syria to get ISIS. We're not really making war on Syria. Trust us, honest, cross our heart and hope to have somebody else die. We're there getting ISIS. And of course it isn't working, because ISIS works for the United States government. The European press is openly reporting on all of this stuff, which is why I'm very surprised that Trump doesn't seem to have a clue about that yet. He needs a good political analyst right now, or he's going to step into a real big trap. They're already being laid for him. Now, the United Nations is reporting on a desperate situation at the Palestinian refugee camp in Damascus. Typhoid has broken out, and they're very concerned that this is going to spread very rapidly in this very crowded, unsanitary environment. Yes, it does. That's what happened to Germany at the end of World War II. And I'm wondering already if this isn't somebody's biological weapon attack against the Palestinians. Now, who would do a thing like that, I wonder? Meanwhile, Israel is drilling for a ground incursion in Syria. And why are they getting ready to invade Syria? Well, we have to help in the war against ISIS. We're not invading Syria. Yes, we're going over your territory without your permission, but we're there to get the evil ISIS. And by the way, we have got photos and videos of ISIS being supplied by the IDF. That's how open and blatant the fraud really is. Meanwhile, the United States is sending more advisors, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, and munitions for Saudi Arabia's war on Yemen on behalf of their American masters. Because once a nation is conquered and a U.S. puppet put in, they're supposed to stay that way. These nations just don't understand the rules. It was only 2 years ago where Obama was pointing to Yemen as a successful U.S. intervention. We intervened. We gave them a government we wanted them to have. How dare they not want it? What's wrong with those people? Now, Putin has, unfortunately, crossed a significant line. He has now committed Russia to the support and assistance of Iran if Israel attacks Iran, even just its nuclear facilities. This is coming from a former U.S. Senate candidate. And apparently they're very concerned about that. Now, at this point, it's a secondhand report. So I'd like to hear it from Putin himself, because this could just be more of that bad Russia, bad Russia, ooh, bad Russia. How dare they come to the aid of people we're attacking and destroying? They're supposed to stand back and admire our craftsmanship and applaud when we are done, politely here. Moscow has sent some of their top air defense missile systems to Tehran this year. And again, the Western media, oh, this is a provocation by Russia. No, it isn't. This is a business deal. Iran purchased these air defense systems from Russia. Russia delayed delivery under pressure from the U.S. And then as the U.S. started making stink face at Moscow, Moscow said, well, let's give the Iranians the rockets. They already paid for them. And the U.S. State Department is saying, you're not supposed to give Iran the means to defend themselves. We're supposed to just be able to roll over them easily. We are mighty and unstoppable against defenseless, helpless targets. How dare you make them not helpless? Now, we've had another video show up. It's titled, Israel Must Be Obliterated. It looks like it's done by exactly the same people who do Rita Katz's videos, and it's, oh, we're coming to destroy Jerusalem. We're going to eat their dogs and cats, and we're going to starch their shorts and short sheet their bunk beds and steal their Oreo cookies and the rest of it. And this is all coming out of this body called the Middle East Terrorism Research Organization. And as far as I can tell, outside of this one story, this group doesn't exist. Now, I've been informed by one of my readers that this is a creation of a gentleman named Stephen Emerson, and it's basically a repeat of the way Sight was created by Rita Katz. It's another fake. And I guess they ginned up this guy because every time one of these ISIS videos comes out from Sight Intelligence Group, everybody assumes it's a fake because they've always proven to be. So we'll create another front group and another person, and see, all of a sudden we have another anti-terror group that is finding these horrible videos, and you should believe these videos because they don't come from Rita Katz. No, I don't buy these videos at all. It's too convenient for Israel. It's too convenient for the war machine here, and it is completely inexplicable why Iran would do something like that. Where's the motive? Remember, to discover if you're being lied to, look for what should be there and isn't. And what is missing in all of the screams about how evil Iran is and how Russia, how evil they are and all the rest of it, there's never a motive. Like when they tried to claim Assad was gassing his own people with sarin gas, and you ask, why? And they could say, I don't know, just because they're Middle East Arabs and they're all crazy. That's why. They don't have a why. You shouldn't ask for a why. Just believe us when we tell you they're bad, we're good, we have a right to kill them and take all their wealth. And this is just more of the same. Iran has not invaded or attacked another country in a war of aggression and conquest in over 200 years. U.S. can't make that same claim. Israel can't make that same claim. They're not a warlike country. They just want to be left alone. They want to do business, peace through commerce. But Israel wants them smashed as a threat to their regional hegemony. The U.S. wants to make sure Iranian oil is sold only for the U.S. dollar. And the private central bankers want to smash Iran because it's one of the few remaining countries where they don't have a private central bank issuing all of the public currency as a loan at interest. It's one of the few countries remaining that doesn't allow compounded interest on debt. They are the enemy of all we hold dear, which is poverty for the masses and wealth for the elites. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a quick phone call. Andrew, New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I found online a story about, from the UK Daily Express, where it said that British special forces are supposed to be, going into Syria and, destroying ISIS equipment, dressed in black. But the only thing is, ISIS only dresses in black when they do, these supposed killings. Many of these videos were staged where, British and US...
it's the wardrobe. It's the costuming. Yeah, it is.
So, they're not there, I guess they're there to, fight Assad's forces. And, they even supposedly said that, U.S. forces there, too.
Yeah, and don't forget that a lot of those SAS forces have been caught pretending to be the other side. They caught some of them dressed as ISIS during the second invasion of Iraq. Oh, we got to take a break for commercials. Sorry to cut you off. We'll be right back. America, welcome back to the show here. Now, we're starting to take a closer look at what's going on over there in Bangkok. And it looks to me like the U.S. government has finally realized that they are running out of time in which they can succeed with these covert overthrow, install a puppet regime, and not have everybody freak out about it. And frankly, I think they're already past that point. But it looks like they had a bunch of these plans ready to go, and they're just cranking them up here. Now, over in Thailand, okay, they used to have a U.S. puppet ruler there, Thaksin Shinawatra, and he was supported by the U.S. in his rise to power. The Thai people kicked him out, and all of a sudden we're getting these bombings. And the U.S. is already saying, oh, humanitarian crisis, these poor, suffering Thai people, we just have to intervene and teach them that they don't kick out their U.S. puppet ruler without bad things happening. And here's where it gets very interesting. There's a report that they actually captured the bomber that was caught on the security camera, the guy with the backpack, puts the backpack down, looks at a map, and then just very casually walks away and leaves the backpack there. And yes, the backpack in the video did match the color of the backpack that was found around the remains of the bomb. And it turns out they're saying this is an American citizen that they've arrested. So this is more of the same stuff going on here. Not surprisingly, the United States continues to drop in overall freedom ranking in the world. We're behind Chile right now. I just think back to that wonderful scene from Newsroom on HBO. Talk about America being great because America's got freedom. We don't have that anymore. Chile has more freedom than we do. Great Britain has more freedom than we do. It's all being stolen away from us bit by bit by bit by bit. So the money junkies can sleep soundly at night. The BBC is among broadcasters who repeatedly breach Ofcom code regarding propaganda content. Now, we all see TV commercials and political advertisements, but what most people don't understand in Britain and here in the United States of America, very often what you are seeing presented as a news story is provided to the media outlet. Complete package, tape, copy, everything at virtually no cost, and sometimes with a little, we'll pay you to run this. And it's great for the network news manager because he's got content to put on the air that he didn't have to take out of his own budget. In fact, in Britain, they call it the £1 program scandal. And these stories being put out to it's represented as real news, but it's usually pushing some kind of a product or agenda or whatever. And apparently, international broadcasters, including the BBC, repeatedly break the Ofcom code by screening these programs funded by foreign governments, non-governmental organizations. They really are for sale. They really are for sale. And that's why you should never trust anything on the corporate media. They're not there to report the news. They're there to sell you the next candidate, the next war, the next tax, the next agenda. I remember years ago there was a big stink over this Institute for Skin Care. That wasn't its real name. I'm just paraphrasing here loosely. And they produced a whole bunch of videos about the dangers of skin cancer from too much exposure to sun. And they just gave them to newsrooms all over America, and the newsrooms said, oh, yeah, great, we're going into summer, we'll run it, be careful about sun exposure and skin cancer, which sounds really good until you noticed that every one of these stories never recommended putting on a big floppy hat or putting on long-sleeve shirt. It was always go and buy SPF 3000 sunscreen at your local store, and it turned out this Skin Cancer Institute organization was owned and operated by the Coppertone people. And that's just one example of how very often what you are being told is an objective, unbiased news story is somebody's product placement. Remember the big stink at Fox News over the synthetic bovine growth hormone lawsuit? 2 reporters actually wanted to report the truth about what they found about Monsanto's synthetic bovine growth hormone. Monsanto told Fox News, don't you let them do it. Fox News said take it out of the story. The reporters refused, and they got fired. They sued for wrongful termination, and they lost on appeal. When the courts ruled that, hey, there's no law that says the corporate media has to tell you the truth about anything, and therefore corporate media management has a legal right to order their people to lie to the audience and to fire them if they refuse. And that tells you all you need to know about the American corporate media. Now let's get into the economy. There are growing indications of a major upset on the horizon. Everybody's trying to guess when. I guess when they run out of ink and paper for those printing presses here. Little revelation coming out of Investment Watch blog. 25% of the governors of the Federal Reserve are also employees of Goldman Sachs. I think there might be a conflict of interest there, until you realize that the Federal Reserve is not actually a part of the federal government. It's no more federal than Federal Express. So this little incestuous money junkie relation, that's perfectly okay here. Here's a good illustration of why there's so much fraud on Wall Street. This is from Oraz.com. Citigroup defrauded hedge fund investors of some $3 billion with a B. Their final settlement to get out of the mess was $180 million with an M. All the rest that they got, the $2,820,000,000, they just got to keep. Of course they're going to commit fraud. They get caught and pay a fine. It's cost of doing business. They're still making money hand over fist. They're still committing fraud. The government's still pretending to try and get it under control. Russia has announced they may ban the import of flowers from the Czech Republic and Slovakia. This is not sanctions rebellion. Apparently there's a problem with these flowers coming in with pests that threaten domestic Russian production. And Donald Trump has out there, he's boycotting Oreo cookies. And the reason he's doing that, and I agree, it's an American iconic brand. It's now being made in Mexico and imported into the United States of America. And that is something that really, I think, tells you how bad things have gotten in this country. All these iconic American companies, they've gone out of business. They've moved to other countries like Oreo or Ford. They're down in Mexico. Or Israel takes all the billions of dollars of your tax money that Congress gives them, and they turn around and buy our best companies to take back to Israel, like Intel. Our nation is being strip-mined right before our very eyes with the connivance and complicity of the United States federal government, because they're all getting a piece of the action. We should have a Capitol filled with statesmen and stateswomen, and instead we've got a bunch of merchants arguing with each other over who gets the biggest piece of the carcass of what was once the greatest nation on earth. They should be ashamed of themselves, but if they had any sense of shame, they wouldn't have run for public office in the first place. Now, we're coming up here on our first news break. When we come on back, we're going to be spending a little more time over Hillary Clinton and her email server situation, because the strain is beginning to show. Hillary knows she's in trouble, and her bluff and bluster and bravado are not going to see her through. Even CNN is noticing the strain is beginning to show. And good. I'm enjoying it immensely. I'll be honest, I'm having fun. All right, so we're going to take a break for top of the hour news, and we'll be back with hour number 2 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Our rented lips. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open. 877-300-7645. 877-300-7645 here. Now, we're going to be talking about Hillary Clinton. It's starting to look like she knows she's in trouble. I'm watching Fox News, and they're going on about Hillary's excuses, and apparently her strategy at this point is to claim persecution. You know, if they're making a big deal out of absolutely nothing. I did nothing that was technically illegal, and basically hope that bravado and bluster is going to get her through, which, if this were the first scandal she was involved in, might work. But after all the scandals that have followed the Clintons for all these years, nobody is going to be buying the vast right-wing conspiracy one more time. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So, apparently, as an indication of just how frayed Ms. Clinton is getting, she was having this press conference where people were asking her direct questions about the email server, and she's out there trying to make this joke about her Snapchat account. And if you look at the video, you can see she's, you know, this is all planned and staged. She's going to tell this joke, ha, 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 ha. But you can tell from the body language the tremendous stress she's under. She doesn't think this is funny. She's just hoping she can convince you that it's a laughing matter and make it go away. And apparently she cut one of her press meetings short. Somebody was asking, did you wipe your server? And her non-reply reply was, you mean like with a cloth or something? Because I don't know how any of this digital stuff works. I'm just an incredible dummy who's running for the White House because I'm a woman, and you should vote for me because I'm a woman. No, we're not going to buy that Hillary does not understand the ins and outs of files and what wiping means. I mean, at the very least, we know she had a tablet, a BlackBerry, and a cell phone, which also put the lie to the claim that the server was for her convenience so she could have only one device. But that's the kind of answer somebody makes when they know if they come out and say, no, I didn't wipe the server, there's somebody out there who can come out and say, yeah, you did. Because right now, Hillary cannot rely on the continued support and cooperation of Platte River Networks. They're in their own legal mess regarding the stealing of classified government phone numbers, interfering with some of the phone lines. They're in serious trouble. They don't have a lot of resources. They're just this loft office. The servers were in the bathroom closet. So they can't afford a prolonged legal fight. And sooner or later, they're going to make a deal. They're already providing information that's damaging to Hillary. The existence of a second server, the existence of backup tapes. So anyhow, Hillary's over in Las Vegas, and she keeps permitting everything I did was legally permitted, and only the media that hates me, they're the only ones talking about it. People who love me aren't talking about it. That's probably true. There's at least 3 or 4 people out there who love her who aren't going to talk about it. The rest of us are going to talk about it, though. And Hillary's out there saying everything I did was legally allowed, to which my reply is, you know, there was a time when slavery was legally allowed. Torture is legally allowed. The government says waterboarding is okay. They call it enhanced interrogation. but it's still torture. Locking up Japanese Americans in concentration camps in World War II was legally allowed. What Planned Parenthood is doing is legally allowed, maybe. They may have stepped across the line there. Legally allowed does not mean right. And Hillary is still looking at this as a lawyer. They can't prove I broke the law, therefore I'm okay. Well, I would concur. You're probably never going to go to jail over what you've done, Hillary. But you're running for the White House. And politics is perception. And the perception is growing that you are, at the very least, reckless with classified information. You're not taking responsibility for your own actions. You're looking for scapegoats and loopholes to go through. And we've had enough of that in the Oval Office all these years. Oh, and by the way, one more thing I want you to keep in mind. Hanging traitors who give American weapons to Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria while we are in a state of declared war on those terrorist groups is also legally allowed. Okay, Hillary? Does that make you feel a lot better about what's going on? Okay. Now then, CNN has come out saying Clinton's not handling this email scandal well, that she seems agitated rather than contrite. Well, you're never going to get contrite from either of the Clintons. It's not in their nature. And the fact that she's agitated understands how fragile she is right now. The next revelation could be the tipping point where her poll numbers start to plunge and all those 1% donors that she's been courting start putting away their checkbooks. Ron Fournier was calling yesterday's Clinton press conference one of the worst all-time by a Clinton. I mean, these are master performers, Bill and Hillary. They're practiced at getting on out there and just thrilling the people who are allowed to be in their august presence. And she didn't handle it very well at all. Now, as you know, the courts are trying to collect together all this data about what's been going on. And Congress now wants the BlackBerries that were issued by the State Department to Hillary Clinton's two main aides. But golly gee whiz, the State Department just destroyed those. They were here last week. Sorry. Got put in the shredder. Now, over at MSNBC, Scarborough's out there saying that John Kerry's State Department should not be covering up Clinton's deplorable actions. Well, John Kerry's State Department isn't covering up just for Hillary Clinton. They're covering up for Barack Obama. Because I don't think Hillary Clinton committed an act of treason by sending aid and comfort to America's declared enemies, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, in Syria in time of war without being told to do so. Mark Halperin's out there, and you're going to love this one. Hillary's actions and her private email server were perfectly justified and understandable because she values her privacy. Well, Mark, how about our privacy? I notice you didn't come to our defense when the NSA started prying into all of our lives, when the head of the FBI is out there saying that we shouldn't be allowed to have any privacy. Under our political philosophy, Hillary is entitled to exactly the same degree of privacy we all are, no more and no less. Now, there's another article that came out in the Star Tribune. Probe of Clinton's private server could find more than just emails, including hints of hacking. We're going to look for evidence that hackers actually did get inside. Well, they're a little behind the times, because this famous hacker calls himself Guccifer, already released emails he got from breaking into Hillary's server. Some of them were published in Russia today. There is no question the classified information that was on that server was exposed to hostile interests. There's no question. None whatsoever. They didn't even encrypt the data on the server. It was there in plain text. Once you got onto the server, you could just go through and read and search for whatever. It was wide open. And remember, Hillary violated a presidential executive order by her own husband in employing a outside IT provider to handle classified information that had not been vetted by the DSS. So there's no way Hillary's going to walk away from this saying, everything I did was absolutely right. No, it wasn't. You're deeply in the gray on this one. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, there's been a development, and the headline on the story, as reported in Investment Watch blog, is Federal Judge Makes Big Move That Is Not What Hillary Wanted to See Happen. And they're reporting on the lawsuit brought by Judicial Watch, the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the State Department to secure information about what the heck was going on during this whole attack on the consulate in Libya. And they wanted the records, which were originally scheduled to be released next month, but the judge has moved it up to this week. And who are saying, oh, Hillary's in trouble, she didn't want that to happen. I beg to disagree. Hillary's strategy right now, she understands she can't make the story go away. She's going to have to just tough it all out and have all of her minions out there screaming that it's a vast right-wing conspiracy and that everybody talking about the email server, they just hate women. So now I think her strategy is they're going to just plow on through so that starting next month they can say, oh, it's old news. We've been there, done that, dismissed. There was nothing. It's old news. Why can't you live here in the here and now? They've been playing that game for 20 years. Vince Foster, old news. Travelgate, old news. Cattle futures, old news. Chinagate, old news. Getting fired from the the Watergate Committee, old news. Email server, old news. That's how they do this. And yeah, it did work in the past. Not anymore. Hillary's gone to that well way, way too many times here. Now, there's another story coming out of Investment Watch blog where intelligence professionals at this point are saying the Secretary of State, Kerry, has to immediately strip Hillary Clinton and her top State Department aides, Huma Abedin, Cheryl Mills, and Jake Sullivan, of their security clearances. And that means that everything that is on that server would now be illegal for any of them to own. And the fact that the server is wide open, and now we know there's a second server, nobody even knows where it is. That thing could be wide open to hacking. What I don't understand is why these security clearances weren't canceled when they left the job. Anyway. Now, there's some good news and there's some bad news. The good news is one of the federal prosecutors who helped bring down David Petraeus is now leading the investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email use. And David Kendall, Clinton's lawyer, has now surrendered the thumb drives containing electronic versions of Clinton's emails, which we know are not complete. The thumb drives are now in the possession of the Department of Justice, which I'm not sure I trust them any more than I trust the FBI or Hillary Clinton or David Kendall for that matter, but that's the current state. Now, the bad news is an attorney who worked for the same firm representing Hillary Clinton in this legal battle over the private emails now oversees the State Department's handling of those same emails. It's Catherine Duvall. And apparently, before she came on board the State Department and Hillary Clinton, she worked for the Internal Revenue Service, trying to deflect requests for emails involving the use of the IRS as a weapon against political opponents. So the lawyer who helped lose Lois Lerner's emails is now hired to lose Hillary's. That's the bad news. It's going to be interesting. Now, interesting story. Over in New Jersey, a woman sadly passed away. Apparently had enough advance warning that she wrote her own obituary, which reads, "In lieu of flowers, do not vote for Hillary Clinton." And it's interesting because we know that Hillary's campaign has been very dependent not just on the illegal immigrant vote. 41 million illegal immigrants, and they're all going to vote because nobody can stop them, because we're not allowed to ask them for IDs. It would make them feel guilty about being in the country illegally, blah, 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 blah. But the other major constituency that Hillary's campaign has been resting on is what Hillary's own campaign calls the vagina vote. The belief that women are going to vote for Hillary just because she's a woman. And we are starting to hear from some feminists who are out there saying, you know, voting for a man for the White House doesn't make us any less of a feminist. It means I'm exerting my right as a feminist to exert my right to choose. We are seeing the feminists and women start to break away from Hillary. And it's not because we don't want a woman in the White House. We just don't want that one in the White House. Now, Donald Trump has launched his first, I guess you could call it an attack ad, against Hillary Clinton. It's a 15-second blurb showing Hillary's defenses and evasions and all the things she's done. It simply ends saying, it does matter. It's a jab at Hillary Clinton saying, oh, what difference does it make after all these people got killed in Benghazi? It does make a difference, and it does matter. And it's a very effective spot. And I think it's going to resonate with the American people. We've just had it with these two dynastic ruling families just crashing through our nation, looting it, plundering it for their friends, ignoring the Constitution, and thinking the entire United States of America is their personal playground to just go on out and do whatever they want in. Hillary Clinton's still out there declaring that she will protect the nation from the 1%. She's going to get the 1%, but the 1% continue to be her biggest financial backers. But I think one more good scandal, those checkbooks are going to start being put away. The poll numbers are not good. Okay, Bernie Sanders has now cut Hillary Clinton's lead over him in half. In the latest national polls. He's gaining on her. He's actually beat her in some states. Hillary's support has dropped below 50%. Hillary is unable to win against a generic GOP candidate in most of the swing states now. She is the USS Clintonic, down by the bow, taking water, headed for the bottom. Couldn't happen to a nastier piece of work, in my opinion, here. Now, apparently, Jeb Bush, who's in single digits in his polling, is out there trying to revive his campaign with the American people by saying, we've got to have more domestic spying. You know, the NSA hasn't gone far enough. Nobody's listening to that. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I'm going to back up here a bit because we got cut off by the commercial music here. Jeb Bush is out there, and it is really very obvious that with the exception of Donald Trump, most of our candidates are seriously out of touch with what's really going on in the American psyche right now. So Jeb Bush is down at this National Security Forum in South Carolina, which is an early voting state. And he basically is out there saying we need the National Security Agency, we need to strengthen the Patriot Act, and we shouldn't be worried about whether all of this is violating your constitutionally protected rights. Oh, what kind of nonsense is this? And he says, you know, we've got to find the balance between personal civil liberties and the NSA. And he says, the NSA hasn't gone far enough. We're going the wrong way. The line between personal privacy and the NSA ought to be, well, pretty much on your forehead. That's not going to go over very well with voters, either Republican or Democrat. Because we know the NSA can't stop the computer criminals, may even be the computer criminals. They haven't really found any terrorists. We proved on our website here that it is trivial to create systems of encryption the NSA cannot break. But the NSA has been peeking into our lives, stealing our business secrets. According to Edward Snowden, they keep collections of the pictures of naked spouses and trade them around like free porn trading cards, all at your expense. Ben Carson has come out declaring that no one has a right to refuse mandatory vaccination. So Ben Carson is a pro-vaxxer and, bend over and take your needle like a man or a woman or whatever. Needless to say, and Fox was just repeating that again, Donald Trump is leading in the polls. His lead is growing. He has captured the imagination of the American people that there might finally be somebody outside of the traditional branded, manufactured puppet candidates that we have to pick the lesser of several evils every 4 years. We've had enough of that. And his poll, he's leaping ahead. And pollsters are saying, yeah, Trump can beat Hillary Clinton. Even MSNBC is saying, yeah, Trump could do it. Trump can take the White House. With all his grassroots support, he's got his own money. He's turning down donations from major groups that he thinks want to control him. He wants to be his own man. Boy, that is so different from everybody else in the field out there who's for sale to the highest bidder. Look at Huckabee. He's over in Israel right now, just raking in the dough left and right and saying, oh, yes, the West Bank is part of Israel. Absolutely, the Palestinians are scum, and we've got to send American kids to murder the Iranians here. Just give me more of that money, whatever you say. Give me that little deaf Musketeer hat. Let me touch the wall and get a picture. Now, Trump's latest suggestion has ignited yet more controversy. He wants to change the birthright rules. He wants to change the law that grants citizenship to anybody born in the U.S. regardless of parentage. Now, this is a major task because we're talking about an amendment to the Constitution. Because it was the 14th Amendment passed in the wake of the Civil War that set the birthright citizenship rules that we have today. Now, the 14th Amendment was written to guarantee that all of the newly freed black slaves would be full citizens of the country. It was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to the Civil War, along with the 13th Amendment against involuntary servitude. Now, in the late 1800s, when the Civil War was over, there wasn't a problem with illegal immigration. The U.S. was still expanding. They were starting to expand into the West area. Immigrants who were willing to work and obey the law were welcome in this country. Nobody foresaw this issue of people sneaking into the country over the border and then having a kid just to become instant citizens. And Trump is right. It's an outdated set of rules. It's not valid for the current situation. But to those who are out there saying, there's no way we will support Trump in altering our precious Constitution. If we're going to alter the Constitution, we're going to take away that First and Second Amendment first, because they're not politically correct. You don't need to amend the Constitution. There wouldn't be an issue over birthrights if the Border Patrol was being allowed to do their job. And we know they're not. Obama is telling them, let the people through. Don't arrest them. Put them on buses and trains. Mix them in with the population as quickly as you can. That's his policy. Story and Investment Watch blog, there are those who say a border wall won't work. And I love this. I can't tell if she's intentionally making a joke or she's really this stupid. This is from Michelle Bachmann. They just don't have the vision Donald Trump does. The Chinese built a great wall 5,000 years ago to keep illegals out. You don't see any illegal Mexicans in China. It is funny. And I'd like to think she was intentionally being funny. And by the way, from the military point of view, the Great Wall of China was a failure. The Mongols just rode around the ends of it. Now, the reality is there was a president who completely shut down illegal immigration from Mexico. That was President Dwight D. Eisenhower with his Operation Wetback. And he absolutely halted illegal immigration coming across that border with only 10% of the resources that the current Customs and Border Enforcement have right now. Of course, all those resources are taken up babysitting and daycare for all these illegal immigrants who are pouring in. You want to stop illegal immigration? You just grab them, put them on a trebuchet, and fling them back over. You do that enough times, they're going to stop sneaking over. But when you're there offering amnesty and free food and pony rides in school and education and a protected legal status where they can commit crimes that would get any legal American citizen thrown in prison and walk away from it, of course they're going to come in here. It's a sweet deal, especially for people who are criminals in their home country. But we don't need to talk about changing the Constitution. All we need to do is fortify our border. If we can spend American tax money to build a security wall all along the side of Israel, we can certainly spend it to do that along the southern border of the United States of America. And I know I'm going to get a flood of emails from people saying, oh, you're just being anti-immigrant. No, I'm not. Anybody who wants to come to this country and go through the legal process of becoming a citizen, welcome. I hope we're not a disappointment. Because probably a lot of what you think about this country just doesn't exist anymore. But come on in. Be welcome. Be a part of our society. But step across the border just whenever you feel like it? No. Nobody does that. If you want to be fair, let's have the same exact immigration policy that Mexico does. Bilateral. Okay? Now, you know what happens if you step across the border into Mexico? You get thrown in jail. Anyway. All right. We're coming up here on another commercial break. I'm going to stall for time because I got a story to tell you when we come on back. It's getting real fairy tale out there. You don't know what to believe in anymore. There's so many frauds and hoaxes. Somebody put up a story about the astronomical number of things that you are being told that are absolute, complete, made-up garbage nonsense, and we've had another one hit today. And it's... You just scratch your head about what all this stuff that's going on. All right, so we're coming up on a commercial break. We got somebody who's ringing the phone line, and we're going to get to you when we come back from the commercials. But you're going to love this story when we come back from these words from our sponsors. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to take a phone call real quick, and then I want to get into this story that I've just been eager to tell you all day long here. Mo in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mo, are you there? Oh, hang on. I haven't pushed the button. There, that button. Too many buttons.
Yeah, Michael,
there you are. Yeah, that was my mistake. I'm sorry.
No problem, Michael. Just a couple of thoughts, and I want to get your going along with your theme on the wall and stuff. I remember Ron Paul talking about. I know we both revere Ron Paul as far as an honest man, and back in 2010 or 11, he said, be careful with this wall because it can be it can be used as easily to keep people in as out. And if you just look at, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but if you look at what they've raised, the cost of leaving this country just went up almost 500%.
Yeah.
So announce your citizenship and leave. They're raising the price and they're putting the wall up. That makes me a little nervous.
Well, yeah, they want to keep the slaves in the slave cage. There's no question about it. Now they're trying to dump some more slaves in there. There's already a surplus. Can you believe Bloomberg actually came out and said that if we kicked out the 41 million illegal immigrants in this country, that it would lead to mass unemployment? I mean, it doesn't get more Orwell than that. I mean, if we kick out the 41 million illegal immigrants, I think there's probably going to be a lot of jobs for the 93 million Americans who'd like to have a job and have not been able to find one for years. But Bloomberg is fully on board. Bloomberg is fully on board this agenda to just blur our national identity for the greater good of the New World Odor. Okay, Mo, I need to let you go because I need some time to talk about this story. And I want to preface it by mentioning I just posted to the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com this video that was taken of Hillary Clinton backstage at where she met some activists from Black Lives Matter. And she's out there, she's pandering to them, saying, yes, America's a very racist nation, and yes, Planned Parenthood is definitely making money chopping up black babies, and just going along with whatever. And, you need to look at that. And it's just pandering of the worst sort. Now, do you remember not too long ago, there was a story about a lady named Rachel Dolezal, who was a leader of the NAACP, who turned out to be white. That was it. Wore a lot of, black fashions, black hair, a lot of spray in a bottle tanning stuff. We got another one because Black Lives Matter organizer Sean King has turned out to be white. He's been telling everybody he's biracial, that he had a white mother and a black father, and he bamboozled Oprah Winfrey, and he's in Black Lives Matter, and he's organizer. And apparently his police record from a 1995 incident lists his ethnicity as white. And somebody dug up his birth certificate, and sure enough, both his parents were white. He's another phony. He's another political opportunist phony, just saying whatever it is that's going to get him wealth, power, media attention. It really is pathetic. Now, the defenders of these two people claim that they're not hoaxers, they're not fraudsters. Yeah, they're white, but it's okay for them to claim they're black because they identify with being black. That's what matters. Not what they really are, not what reality is, but they identify with black. Okay, well, if you believe that one, then all of you need to send in a lot of money right now because I identify with being filthy rich. And if you're not going to deny Sean King and Rachel Dolezal their blackness identity, then you should not be denying me my rich identity. Okay? Makes sense, huh? So... I'm never going to be a good politician because I can't keep a straight face when I'm putting out the bovine excrement that bad. Oh, man. All right. Now, yesterday we had this article about this liberal organization. Actually, it was a university. Came out and declared that whites can never be oppressed because they are white. That's it. They have decided whites will always be the oppressor, the blacks will always be the oppressee. Well, it turns out that they were wrong. There's already a law in this country that people who are selling their TV stations have to pay higher taxes if they sell the stations to white people than to black people. And if you think that sounds racist, you're right. It is. And it's also true. And now we are hearing more and more liberals wanting to impose higher taxes on white people just for being white. So don't tell us that we can't be oppressed because we're white. We're being oppressed right now. We were being oppressed when we were losing jobs to less qualified people of color because of the quota systems. Affirmative action. And you know something? A lot of black people didn't like affirmative action because those blacks who accomplished things on their own skills and merits were ignored and dismissed. Oh, they are a quota hire. They didn't really accomplish anything. They didn't even like it. It was a failed policy. And now they're out there saying that white people have to pay higher taxes just because they're white people. At 24 hours after this university says whites can never be oppressed. You do not cure racism by being racist. It's never worked. Reverse discrimination is still discrimination. Nonsense here. Now, apparently down in Arizona, 3 violent criminal aliens have been released into the general population under the Obama immigration policy. The sheriffs are sounding the alarm, saying they're expecting these guys are going to do something. There was actually this black lady who read this city council that appointed a couple of illegals as city commissioners, saying, what kind of a system do we have here when the illegal people get government offices and they get amnesty from crime? You know, where legal citizens do the same thing, they're going to go to jail. And it really is. If you're an illegal immigrant in this country, you're getting a sweet deal from the U.S. government for whatever reason they want you. Now, as I mentioned to that earlier caller, up in Spokane County, Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich is out there saying that People who support the Constitution of the United States of America are on the same level as ISIS. Ooh, those ISIS people. How dare they want to hit a reset button? Well, Thomas Jefferson didn't think that the U.S. was going to last more than 100 years in the first place. And he said a little revolution every now and then is a healthy thing. And my response to this sheriff is, you show me a part of the government that's actually working properly, the way it's supposed to. And I'll make sure it's protected. But right now, it looks like everything's broken down. The police are stealing from the public. Traffic tickets, civil forfeiture. They're murdering more Americans than the terrorists are. SEC's protecting the bank fraudsters. FDA's protecting the drug fraudsters. Minerals Management Service was protecting the Deepwater Horizon until that blew up. The federal government is absolutely the mirror of what you've been told to think it is and what it does. It is supposed to do. SEC ignored Bernie Madoff. USDA is protecting giant food corporations and GMO products while attacking small organic natural farmers. NSA is stealing all of our business secrets, prying into our lives, but unable to stop the cyber criminals. You show me one part of this government that's actually working. Even NASA, my favorite agency, can't get a man into orbit on their own, can't even get to the space station, certainly can't go back to the moon. Yeah, I'll protect this government when you show me what part of it is still working properly, and I can't find any of it. Once the government goes bad, it goes all the way bad. And that's what's happened here, unfortunately. It's corrupt top to bottom, inside out. I see no possibility of redemption for our current power structure. I think it's going the way of the former Soviet Union. We'll be back after the news. Oh, hi, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. Now, we have been talking about this push by the politically correct people to just blur the lines, blur our sense of identity, blur our gender, so forth and so on. And we were hearing about how this LBGT group was out there saying that we shouldn't use the words boy and girl in school anymore because so many people really aren't sure what their gender identity is. And it's funny, when I was a kid, that was never a problem. We knew what we were. Anyway, so now all of a sudden Tennessee is going on down this path, as it were, and they are now banning the use of the words mother and father on all state documents. They're to be replaced with parent-number. I'm not a number, I'm a free man. So that's what it is. And this messing around with the language, Orwell warned about it, was called Newspeak. That's what it is. They're taking away words that mean certain ideas they no longer approve of. Do you know the whole liberal philosophy is a fraud? The liberal philosophy is that if they re-engineer the environment, they will re-engineer the human mind to make it superior. In other words, conforming with their arbitrary definition of what good human thinking should be. And we don't know if it's good or not, but it's what they think it should be, and therefore it must be good in their minds. It all is based on a book written by a lady named Margaret Mead, Coming of Age in Samoa, which put forth the idea that in Samoa, the young people did not go through the emotional traumas associated with puberty, and that therefore all of this emotional upset had to be a product of our society and the environment. That humans are born a blank slate, tabula rasa, and that all of the stresses and angers and angst that we feel are an aspect of society. And if they re-engineer society, all of that emotional pain would go away. That's the entire foundation of the liberal political philosophy, of tinkering with absolutely everything, because we're re-engineering the world to make you a happier human being. And it keeps falling flat on its face, but it's an entrenched industry, if you will. But it's all a fraud because Margaret Mead's book was a complete fake. She went down to Samoa not to find out what was going on, but looking for confirmation of a pre-existing political agenda. And while Margaret Mead was down in Samoa, she met these two ladies, and she made friends with them, just started talking with them, and pushing them in a certain direction. Now, Polynesian people love to talk story. It's not like we got TVs or anything like that back then. And they're very polite. And one of the displays of politeness in Samoan society is that you will talk about what your guest clearly wants to talk about. And so these two girls, basically following the lead, not knowing Margaret Mead was going to write a book to found a political revolution on, they told Margaret Mead what Margaret Mead wanted to hear. Margaret Mead wrote it down and brought the book back. Instant celebrity, liberal icon. The problem is there are provable errors, fundamental errors in the book. She describes the Samoan people of the time she was there as sexually promiscuous, no rules whatsoever, because that's what the Hawaiian people of the same era were, until the missionaries showed up and spoiled it for everybody. But Mead was wrong. The Samoan culture has always been sexually monogamous. You know, you get married, you are loyal to your spouse, and that's it. And she makes a lot of mistakes like that. And a lot of people have tried to point out the book cannot possibly be relied on because of all the mistakes that are in there. The government of Samoa actually got involved, and they tracked down the two girls that Margaret Mead had spent time with and interviewed them, and the girl said, yeah, we're just telling her what she said she wanted to hear. It's all a complete fake. It keeps messing up. And again, this goes back to that wonderful newsroom show, that segment where our protagonist is challenging this other woman on the stage saying, you know, if liberals are so smart, how come you're always losing? And he's absolutely right. They're always losing because their primary thesis is flawed. That by changing the environment, changing what you have access to, changing the colors, changing whatever, that they will change the human mind. It doesn't work. It never has. Doesn't matter how gender neutral you make the school environment, boys are still going to be boys and girls are still going to be girls. But it's politically correct to believe in liberalism, no matter how badly it messes people up. So let's talk a little bit about computers. As you know, the hackers are running rampant all over our lives here, but there's one that's cause for a great deal of joy, and it's the Ashley Madison hack. Now, for those of you who are not paying attention, Ashley Madison was the name of a website specifically for people who wanted to have affairs outside their marriage. And, oh, it's shocking and so forth. No, it isn't really. The statistics are that half of all married people have an affair once during their marriage. That's the numbers. And I'm not excusing it, and I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying it's not that strange a thing to be considering. So Ashley Madison was a website where people could sign in and hook up and meet other people who were going to have sex-only dates just for the sex, for the thrill of having a different sexual partner. And Ashley Madison got hacked, and a huge number of the identities of these people cheating on their wives was released. Probably some divorce lawyer did this. Broke in there and said, oh, I'm going to have lots of business. I'm going to put this all on out there. We'll be raking in the dough from those divorce settlements. Now, the database is out, and it looks like 15,000 of the accounts on Ashley Madison were affected with a .mil or .gov email address. Of these, US.Army.mil had the most, with 6,788 accounts, followed by Navy.mil at 1,665, so much for the girl in every port mythos, and the Marine Corps, which had only 809, so Marines are honorable people. But apparently the single government domain with the most Ashley Madison accounts was the Department of Veterans Affairs. Meanwhile, 22 of Washington, D.C. city government, 22 Montgomery County employees used their work addresses to sign up. Boy, it's one big party there in government and the military. They're having a lot of fun at our expense here. Not too surprisingly, a bunch of the money junkies are found in the Ashley Madison data dump as well. Let's see, Wells Fargo, using their bankers' email accounts. Wells Fargo, 175, Bank of America, 76, Deutsche Bank, 73, Goldman Sachs, 45, PNC Bank, 28, U.S. Bank Corp, 15, Bank of New York Mellon, 14, Citigroup, 51, JP Morgan Chase, 9, Capital One, 4. And apparently 10 at the DowJones.com. These are people who are using their business banking email addresses to go on out and find people to have affairs with outside their marriage. Must be nice to be a money junkie, what can I tell you? Anyway, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And earlier when talking about Hillary's defense that everything she did is legal, I made the remark that everything Planned Parenthood has been doing is legal. That may not actually be the case. There are two areas of law Planned Parenthood may be in violation of. It is against the law to alter the method of abortion in order to preserve bodily tissues for later resale. And it appears Planned Parenthood was doing that, favoring the partial birth abortions over other methods. The second issue is that if there's a partial birth abortion and the fetus is still alive, you are obligated under federal law to try and keep it alive. Get it in an incubator, IVs, whatever it takes. It's a premature baby. And premature babies can be cared for and be allowed to grow into kids. And they're supposed to do that. And there's no indication they ever tried. Now we're starting to see all these experts on the use of harvested fetal tissue come forward to say they've looked at the specific sales Planned Parenthood was engaged in, and they're saying that these sales are not really possible if the tissue being delivered has been dead for too long. And they're looking at the timeline, and they're beginning to suggest that, yes, some of these babies were still alive when they were taken from their mother's body, and they were literally cut up while still alive to harvest certain very fragile tissue. There's one article over in WorldNet Daily. Headline, Scientist Suspects Aborted Babies Alive Until the Heart's Cut Out. Another article, Investment Watch blog, Planned Parenthood Harvested Organs from Babies Still Alive. Yep, right out of Margaret Sanger and the eugenics movement. You're only a human being if we say you're a human being. Other than that, you're just product. So where is the outcry from all of this? We're expected to be willing to go to war because ISIS has abused a kitten somewhere or beheaded somebody. But let's be very honest. Planned Parenthood has murdered more Americans than ISIS ever could. We're not supposed to get upset about that here. Story out of INFOWARS.com. Planned Parenthood has politicians completely paid off. The media in their pocket certainly seems to be the case. Firestorm of publicity over the videos came and went. Oh, we're back onto Hillary's email server. Hillary may have been thinking that the Planned Parenthood mess was going to get the focus off of her server. Nope, didn't work. But you know something? We have broad minds. We can keep multiple scandals in our memory at the same time. Apparently, 45 of the 46 United States senators who voted against defunding Planned Parenthood were getting cash donations from Planned Parenthood. Several media organizations and their owners have deep financial ties to Planned Parenthood. So now we're seeing a new low for the American establishment of selling living baby parts for cash. That's where we are. That's the moral level that we have sunk to in Washington, D.C. and our corporate media boardrooms here. Now, yesterday I mentioned this, but I want to bring it back here as kind of a prelude. U.S. Congressman Bill Posey of Florida went to the floor of the House of Representatives to talk about the whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson. Now, Dr. William Thompson worked for the CDC and was assigned to write a research paper proving there was no link between the MMR vaccine and autism. The report stated that in its conclusions. And the vaccine industry took this CDC report and said, see, it's the CDC says it's perfectly safe. Now, there's two problems with that. First of all, the CDC is not a part of the U.S. government. It is a for-profit private corporation financially supported and tied in with vaccine makers, pharmaceutical companies. It's not an impartial, objective observer. Second, Dr. Thompson blew the whistle, came forward saying that the CDC intentionally rigged the report. They threw out data that suggested a link between the vaccine and autism, and then said, well, on the basis of the data that we still have here on the table, we cannot find the link. It was a complete fraud. It was a complete fake. I mean, look how fake the world has become. Black people who aren't black, vaccines that aren't safe, GMO food that isn't nutritious. We live in a world of fakery because fakery is big business here. And getting on back to the vaccines, very pertinent question here. If vaccines are safe, why has the United States government paid out $3 billion to vaccine-injured families? Why does the vaccine court acknowledge over 100 people have been killed by adverse reactions to the measles vaccine? And by the way, according to CDC, only one person has died of measles in the last 10 years, and she had just had the MMR shot. It's all about the money. Now, there's another story coming out of Natural Health 365, and it's reporting on how people who are critical of vaccines, asking questions about vaccines, or saying people should have a right to decide for themselves, are being targeted by what appears to be an organized hit squad that are out there basically trying to sell this agenda that you will take your vaccines the government says you should have. You have no choice in the matter. Trust us, they're perfectly safe. They'll never harm you. They will protect you from whatever. Remember that outbreak they had over in University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign? People are getting the illness. They'd already had the vaccine twice, and the official recommendation is maybe you should get the vaccine the third time. Maybe that'll make it better. They don't really know. They're guessing. It's all snake oil. And apparently because the science is not supported, there's an organized hit squad that's going out trying to wreck the careers of anybody who questions the vaccine orthodoxy. Anyway, we're going to grab a real quick phone call here. Sherry in Missouri, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Michael. I want to go back to the Planned Parenthood and the selling of organs. Mm-hmm. And people must correlate that with the donation of organs when your loved ones supposedly have passed away. And that blood has to be beating through your body.
Okay, Sherry, I'm going to have to ask you to wait for 4 minutes. We hit the commercial break. I thought maybe this is going to be a short call. We'll come back to your call as soon as we finish these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and we're going to go ahead and go back to Sherry in Missouri. And Sherry, would you sort of pick up what you were talking about, organ donation? Sherry, are you there? Sherry, are you there? Okay, I guess somehow we lost our connection. I'm going to put Sherry back on hold in case we can sort of pick up what happened to her. All right, moving on here. And again, getting back to the thesis I have mentioned many times before, that individual scientists are just as corruptible as individual clergy or individual politicians, and here is a good example. There is a website called GMO Answers. It is a pro-GMO website. The website is admitted to be funded by members of the Council of Biotechnology Information, which includes BASF, Bayer, Crop Science, Dow AgroSciences, DuPont, Monsanto, and Syngenta. Now, they have this independent expert, okay, who goes by the name of Kevin Folta. He's a plant scientist at the University of Florida, and he is cited as an independent expert confirming the assertions made by GMO Answers, except that a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit revealed that he gets money from Monsanto. It is a research grant to be used at his discretion for outreach projects. In other words, we at Monsanto are going to give you a bunch of money to go on out and claim you're an independent expert on the website that is helping us sell our products. That's how this stuff gets done. And the fact that they're going to these lengths tells you they know this stuff is dangerous. If they actually thought GMO was safe, I mean, they'd be serving in their own company cafeteria, which they don't. They wouldn't hesitate to spend the money to change the labels. Contains GMO, contains more GMO than the other guy's product. No, we've got more GMO than all of them put together. You don't see that. 64 countries around the world already ban GMO food, GMO crops. They don't want it inside their borders. Here in the United States of America, Congress is getting ready to ban not only GMO labeling, but bans on GMO crops at the state and local level. In other words, completely bypassing the will of the voters down here on Maui, who got a ballot initiative on the ballot and got it passed. We don't want GMO plants in our very delicate ecosystem on these islands. And Monsanto found a cooperative judge to issue a stay against the ban and put it on hold until the Hawaii legislature can look at the issue next year, 2016. But if Congress passes this bill, it's moot. Monsanto gets its way. The voters don't have a choice. All right, looks like we've got Sherry in Missouri back. What is on your mind?
Well, you know what people don't realize is that what's going on with Planned Parenthood is what's going on with their elders and their loved ones when they say they're brain dead. They are harvesting their organs also.
Well, there's a difference, Sherry. There's a difference, Sherry. The difference is that, and I've signed a donor card too. When I die, I want to donate my body to science because medical students can always use a good laugh. These little fetuses don't have that choice. Okay? And
True.
that's the difference. I can give my own organs away. I can't give your organs away. You wouldn't agree to that, would you?
No.
Okay, well
what I'm saying is that what people need to realize is that these people, that's what they've brought in, this brain death thing, that no, they're really not dead because the blood is still pumping through their body. And they give them a paralyzation drug, and the last organ they take is the heart. And it is no different. It's still a money operation.
They're cutting up a living person, is what they're doing.
Correct.
Yeah, and they justify it by saying these aren't human. Nobody is human until we, the elites, have decided they are human. Anyway, Sherry, I need to let you go. We're coming up on the end of the show, and I got a couple of things more I want to cover. So thank you for the phone call on that one. And we are going to go ahead and close our phone lines for the rest of the day here. Now, there's a very enlightening story that came out of Freedom Article, toolsforfreedom.com. And they're talking about a recent interview that Bill Gates gave. Now, Bill Gates is right behind all of this modern eugenics, vaccines. He thinks vaccines are great. He has said many times vaccines should be used to control human population. And in this one clip, he comes out and he either slips up or he doesn't think it's a secret anymore. The benefits of vaccines are reducing population growth. And there's nothing new in that. All the way back during the Nixon administration, Henry Kissinger authored a document, National Security Study Memorandum 200, Impact of Third World Population on U.S. Strategic Interests, meaning money. Nixon adopted that as U.S. policy, which called for covert population reduction in the third world so there weren't all these pesky indigenous people running over resources American corporations wanted. Now, when Gerald Ford succeeded Richard Nixon and learned about this, he was appalled and he ordered a halt because, among other things, they were going on out and giving free typhus vaccinations to childbearing age women and who suddenly couldn't have babies anymore. And it was exposed that these vaccines also contained sterilization chemicals. Had it happen again over in Kenya just a few months ago. And now Bill Gates is out there saying the benefits of vaccines to reduce population growth. Now, I understand there's a population problem. And there always will be, because sex is a lot more fun than dying. I have a real issue with those who set themselves up to say, I will decide who does and does not get to have babies. Whether it's Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, Margaret Sanger, or any of the people over at Planned Parenthood. How dare you set yourself up as gods? If you truly believe the human population is too large for this planet to support, find yourself a very top building and fling yourself off. Try not to hit anybody important on the way down. But I have a message to Mr. Bill Gates, and especially to his wife Melinda. Having a lot of money does not grant you divine inspired wisdom or any special insight. It gives you the means to engage in a great deal of mischief in a mean way. And especially in light of the track record of vaccines that contain things that you're not being told about, like sterilizing agents. This rush to mandate vaccines, it's just one more reminder. Our government sees you, the American people, as livestock, to be managed, to be harvested, to be culled when necessary. We'll decide what drugs you get. We'll decide what food you eat. We'll decide when and if you may have children. That's far too important for you individual Americans to have any say about. We know what's best for the planet. It is amazing. The European Union Commission has responded to growing public demands for an assessment of glyphosate, which has now been linked to cancer by several institutions and agencies. The EU Commission's formal reply so far is none of your business. You don't have any right to know if glyphosate pesticide is causing cancer. If you get cancer, we've got hospitals and pills and radiation and chemotherapy. You'll be fine. You don't need to know if we actually gave you that cancer to make a fast buck. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of the program today here, and we're getting an update from the situation in Bangkok. Earlier reports were that they have arrested the bomber. There was a report that it was American. Now they're saying it's a French national. We're still trying to dig out the details about what's going on. There may have been more than one suspect. We know there was more than one bombing. So we're still trying to sort all of this stuff out. Getting on back to science, health, and corporate profitability, Ritalin use has soared. They're now writing 1 million prescriptions a year. And more people are really concerned that these kids don't really need this drug. This is one of the drugs that is prescribed for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which the guy who came up with that term admitted shortly before he died. It was a fictitious disease. It was just made up to sell pills with. And some of these pills they are selling to treat this made-up imaginary disease have very real nasty side effects, including inexplicable acts of mass violence and suicide. And more people are saying, we're not sure these kids really need this medication. We don't care if they need it or not. We're making money hand over fist, and as long as we're sharing it with corporate media and members of the United States Congress, we have nothing to fear. Now, there's a lot of attention that is being brought to a new potential cancer cure, GC-MAF. And more is starting to appear about how it works, how it's able to boost the immune system so that your own body's immune system can get rid of cancer. Now remember, if you get no treatment at all, there is already a 25% chance your body will get rid of the cancer. The orthodox approach is, well, we don't know which 25% are going to heal themselves, so we'll just radiate and poison all of them and make that much more money. Now, despite all the talk of all these organizations about we're searching for the cure for this or that, nobody's really looking for a cure. That's bad business. They're looking for treatments. They're looking for maintenance of quality of life. Because if you have a case of the creeping blorch, and you come over to me and say, Dr. Mike, I have a case of the creeping blorch, and I cure you, and you pay me, you go away, I don't see you again. It's the end of the transaction, end of the revenue. If you come over to me and you say, I've got the creeping blorch, and I say, I have something that'll make you feel better for a month, and you give me your money, and you go away, and you come back next month, you give me more money, and you go away, and you come back the month after that, and you give me more money. That is where the big bucks lie. Treatments, not cures. Nobody in the medical industrial complex really wants a cure. That's why they haven't found any. Have you noticed that? They haven't cured anything in a long time. It's all treatments and maintenance and vaccines for things that you don't actually have yet, because that's where the money is. So now they're talking about how some very prominent doctors have wound up dead recently under some very mysterious circumstances. And already the official story is starting to come out. This guy who walked out of his house and was found face down in a river some miles away. Oh, yeah, he was a suicide. Very clearly, he was just really depressed. He was a suicide, yeah. No question about it whatsoever. We've allowed the desire for money to destroy what was best in the American character. And it was engineered by that private central bank, because the debt goes up and up and up and up, and that awareness of debt warps your sense of morality and ethics until all you can think of is, I need that next piece of paper and ink to give to the bankers, or bad things will happen to me. That piece of paper and ink is what makes you a slave. They don't need chains of iron and steel. You're made slaves by your dependence on imaginary money, your beliefs that this is the way life is supposed to be. You are a slave. I know you don't want to hear that, but you are. And maybe it's time to realize it and get just a little angry about it. Now then, over in Scotland, as you know, the church continues to be scandalized all over the globe for very bad treatment of little tiny children. And apparently the Roman Catholic Church in Scotland is being urged by the Independent Commission that they should just come out and apologize to all the Scottish victims of clergy sex abuse. Hasn't happened yet. Probably they're thinking, well, we already forgave ourselves and we've granted each other absolution, so no apologies are necessary in His infinite mercy. This one's just a little bit out there. This is reported in the Independent over in Great Britain. And they're talking about this husband and wife who took in a 13-year-old girl because of their family, her family problems, and then basically kept her as a sex slave for 5 years and justified it all on the Bible. Old Testament Bible passages. Oh yes, you have to do this for us because God says this. And apparently this girl bought it for 5 years, then finally escaped, and this couple has been arrested, and well, they should. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about the entertainment industry here. There's this article over in daveandchad.com, Fantastic Bore. And they're talking about how many remakes of Fantastic Four there have been, all the way back to the one Roger Corman did, back in, I don't even remember when. And this last one has bombed at the box office. And it turns out the fact that they finally had a black Human Torch was not going to draw people in. The PC crowd are just scratching their head and saying, why didn't it work? They're supposed to love it when we change these things around. But apparently a big problem with this movie was similar to the reason the remake of Day the Earth Stood Still didn't really fly with the crowd. It got preachy. Oh, you humans are the problem. We have to come and deal with you. And I'm not surprised that I'm seeing the original Michael Rivero version of Day the Earth Stood Still on TV a lot more today than the more recent Keanu Reeves version of Day the Earth Stood Still. I think the remake was just horrible. So they're talking about this latest Fantastic Four. It made $26 million in its opening week. It's got to hit $300 million just to break even. And basically it says Hollywood has become out of touch, preachy, spoiled, too much political elitism. And they're absolutely right. Hollywood is cranking out remakes, retakes, remakes of remakes of remakes of remakes, each new version tuned to the propaganda demands of corporations, governments in Washington, D.C. and Tel Aviv. And Hollywood is going through a repeat of what happened in the aftermath of the McCarthy blacklisting, when the truly creative people were driven out of Hollywood for daring to think really creative thoughts like, why are we supposed to hate the Russians now? They were our allies in World War II. But that wasn't what we were supposed to be teaching America, and they got blacklisted. Lives got ruined, hundreds of them. Now, Hollywood has recently gone through a purging of anyone who is not politically correct. And as a result, what they've got left there is basically this common pulp of people who are just going to do what they're told to do, and nobody can come up with a new idea. We saw this happen. Hollywood went into a major slump in the post-McCarthy years. In fact, it was one of the factors that allowed television to take over, not just the convenience of being in the home. When television first came along, it was all news reports and, a lot like AM radio. When Hollywood couldn't put out any product, the TV network said, we can do our own dramatic presentations. And it worked. So Hollywood did this to itself. And I'm not surprised that Hollywood is no longer the global center of filmmaking. Anyway, listen, there's the music. I got to get out of here and go do things with the lovely Lady Claire. We'll be back tomorrow here on GCN. Until then, aloha, America.